SEC Media Days are underway today, and if I was in the audience, these are some of the questions I would be asking Steve Sarkisian today on Locked On Longhorns.
You are Locked On Longhorns, your daily podcast on the Texas Longhorns. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Locked On Longhorns, the show. Jonathan Davis and Lacey Butler, your hosts. Today's episode of Locked On Longhorns is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Remember, terms do apply. On today's episode of Locked On Longhorns, SEC Media Days, a new start for the University of Texas and the University of Oklahoma going into the 2024 season. Some of the things I'm most interested in are the questions I would have for Steve Sarkisian if I was in the audience today at SEC Media Days. In the second segment, Inside Texas released some position group power rankings at this point, kind of heading into the fall camp and then ultimately into the season, right? What position groups they're most confident in and what position groups still need some work. So we'll discuss that in the second segment. And then the day a lot of people have been waiting for, not the official date of the release, I believe, but just the pre-order. People will be getting NCAA 25 today, but we've seen some of the Texas players and where their ratings are just previously through, Quinn Ewers playing Chad Ochocinco and other, avenues from people that have gotten the game early. So we're going to discuss some of the player ratings that we've seen thus far and, if NCAA 25, if EA Sports got it right or not. All of that and more on today's episode of Locked On Longhorns, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So once again, it's a new start for the Texas Longhorns heading into the 2024 season. SEC Media Days. Normally around this time, we'd be headed to Big 12 Media Days. And, that happened last week. We saw that spectacle. The main story was Mike Gundy talking about, Ollie Gordon get that DUI and how he might give him more carries to punish him in the first game. And, how 3 or 4 beers really isn't that bad. So, Mike Gundy still being Mike Gundy and the Big 12 is still the Big 12, but it's a new start for Texas and Oklahoma heading into the SEC. And I would venture that the majority of the conversation this week at SEC Media Days will be about Texas and Oklahoma joining the SEC. Of course, Steve Sarkisian, Brent Venables, and the players they've brought to the University of Texas will field the majority of those questions, about, their teams going into the SEC. But, I think Georgia, Alabama, Florida, LSU, Tennessee, like all of their representatives will have to answer or talk about Texas and Oklahoma joining the SEC. To me, at this event, that's just the biggest storyline by far and probably the storyline we'll hear the most about. Now, a lot of us, most of us are more interested in the football team that will be on the field rather than the conference we're playing in or for. And so that's what, hopefully, we get some good insight on from Steve Sarkisian and the players about what this Texas football team will look like going into next season and what's their mantra. Last offseason, we heard obsessed, right? They were obsessed with winning. They were obsessed with the details it took to be a champion at this level, a conference champion and a national champion. So what's the mantra going into this season, right? Because you need a fresh voice. You need a fresh mantra for the team. So those are the things I'd be interested in. But some other questions, some more specific targeted questions I would have for Steve Sarkisian is the first one: what growth has Quinn Ewers shown from year 2 to year 3 this offseason? The reason I would ask that question is because I believe last year Quinn Ewers was exceptional, right? He was definitely one of the best quarterbacks in the country. And I thought when he came off that injury, he was even better, right? Down the stretch, didn't lose a game until the Sugar Bowl, broke records in the Big 12 championship, started off a little slow in the Sugar Bowl, but came on and, was one play away from getting us to the national championship. I believe Quinn Ewers last year was good enough to get us to the playoffs and good enough to win the Big 12. This year, I think we're going to need more from Quinn Ewers if we expect to win the SEC or want to win the SEC and want to compete for a national championship in the 2024 season, right? I think he's shown maturity and growth on and off the field his first 2 years at the University of Texas. And I think we need to see another bump, another jump from Quinn Ewers if Texas wants to win the SEC this year or compete for a national championship. The second question I would have for Steve Sarkisian is, if the opportunity presents itself, how comfortable are you with Arch Manning's ability to go out there and win games for this football team? Now, the reason I would ask this question is because the last 3 years we've seen as a starter for Quinn Ewers, he has missed time due to injury, right? So if history repeats itself, you're going to have to rely on Arch Manning at some point this year. Now, I know they've said they expect him to play a lot and he's going to get time regardless. And the way that Texas should be playing against some of these teams, he should get some playing time, but you don't expect him to go out there and have to play significant minutes for you, right? Or you're not expecting him to go out there and, play when games are in the fire or, when games aren't decided yet, right? So That's going to be Quinn Ewers' job if Quinn Ewers is healthy. But like I said, his junior year of high school, his first year at Texas, and last year he has missed games due to injury, right? So we have to at least account for that, right? And we've seen at the University of Texas these teams, right, over the last 3 years for Steve Sarkisian, we've had to use multiple quarterbacks, right? So you have to at least be prepared for that and ask, where is Arch Manning's comfort level at this point, right? Can you rely on Arch Manning to go out there and win games in the SEC this year or potentially win a playoff game? And I actually think he can. But I would like to hear Steve Sarkisian's answer on that because, like I said, the last 3 years for Quinn Ewers as a starter has missed games due to injury. You have to at least be ready for that to be a possibility this season. Next question I would ask is, how do you plan to utilize more than 3 wide receivers in this offense, or is that a goal for this season? I think last year, Jahdae Cook was our 4th wide receiver with 8 catches. Steve Sarkisian in 3 years at the 40 acres has not been able to consistently use more than 4 wide receivers. Now, we've had really good tight ends that have been utilized. We've had really good running backs that have been utilized in the receiving game, but we've never been able to use more than 4 wide receivers at a time. And that's been ideal. That's kind of been the fantasy because of what we were able to see at the University of Alabama, right? With Henry Ruggs, Jalen Waddle, Devontae Smith, and Jerry Jeudy all being able to produce at the same time. And now with the receiver room we have, when you can go 6, 7 deep, the expectation is at least 4 of them should be able to shine this year in the field in some capacity and be consistent players in this rotation. So I would ask Steve Sarkisian, I would press him about that. What is your plan, or how do you plan to utilize more than 3 wide receivers in this offense this season? I'd be very interested in his answer. Returning 4 of 5 starters on the offensive line, do you think the addition of Cam Williams can take this line to the next level? I think that's a big storyline that not a lot of people are talking about, or maybe I haven't heard a lot about it. Maybe I'm just ignorant to the talks going around. But I just think, Cam Williams replacing Christian Jones is a huge storyline on that right side of the offensive line. I think Quinn Ewers has been a really good quarterback, but I do think at times he can struggle under pressure or get a little skittish in the pocket under pressure, as most young quarterbacks will. And, Cam Williams, as big as he is going to be responsible for keeping, Quinn Ewers upright, but also making sure he's comfortable, right? You don't want Quinn Ewers thinking, what if Cam Williams misses his block? Or damn, I got to worry about who's coming off the right side because, Cam Williams is a little shaky in pass coverage, right? Obviously, I think he'll be able to dominate in the run game. He's just a big physical force. It's going to be hard to move him, right? It's a lot easier for him to move people than to get moved. But in the passing game, how consistent is he going to be? Now, we've heard really good reviews. I think I talked about on the episode last week about how Cam Williams, has really been coming along. Still, it's going to be interesting to see, how this offensive line looks, returning 4 or 5 starters, but replacing a tackle on the right side. How beneficial will that be for the Texas Longhorns this season? Earlier in the offseason, this would be to Steve Sarkisian. You said you desired 5 to 6 defensive tackles that could play at a high level for this football team. How comfortable are you that you have that going into the season, right? At one point, it felt like we had Alfred Collins and Vernon Broughton, and that was it, right? In terms of our rotation, we brought in Tia Savea, we brought in Bill Norton, we brought in the other defensive tackle. His name is slipping my mind right now. And you got Sadir Mitchell, Alex January, other players in that room that are ready to contribute. And so, we brought in, at least it seems like 5 to 6 defensive tackles that should be able to provide in a high level for us this year. But I would ask Steve Sarkisian about that. Around spring ball, months ago, you were saying that you didn't feel that you had the requisite bodies you needed to have the type of run defense and just defensive tackle room that you want. Now, do you feel like you have those pieces? And then the last question I would ask Steve Sarkisian is, there seems to still be question marks about who the starters at corner are, specifically at the field corner position, and safety will be, right? With one of the worst statistical pass defenses in the country last year, how confident are you that this secondary group can be one of the best in the country? I just think in modern football, I think in the conference that we're moving to, I think when you're trying to win a national championship, you have to have a good pass defense, or you have to be able to get a pass rush or stop the opposing quarterback on crucial downs. And we saw an inability to do that last year, right? But that's going to have to be a focus this season when we still don't know who our starter is going to be at field corner, when we lost 2 really good corners to the transfer portal. We still don't know how we're going to effectively use Jahdae Barron. We still don't know who our starter is going to be at safety, even though they're going to rotate a lot. To me, you just don't want to have these question marks this close to the season. I know we're still 5-6 weeks away. I think whoever's going to be on the field is going to be really talented for the Texas Longhorns. But coming off a year where the pass defense was not great, I think you would have liked to have more things figured out by now. So that's just something I would ask Steve Sarkisian about. A quick word from our sponsors, and then we get into some positional group power rankings right now for the Texas Longhorns football team, courtesy of Inside Texas. Today's episode of Locked On Longhorns is brought to you by eBay. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. All right, so somewhat quickly, Inside Texas last week, I guess the question they got on and then they took some time to write out the article. Their position group power rankings as of last week, about 5 or 6 weeks, heading into the football season. What units are they most comfortable in? What units do they feel are the best on the football team right now? And then what units do they have ranked at the bottom, right? And this doesn't mean that those units, these are the units that they, and for the most part, I agree, may not be as comfortable with going into the season. Number one is wide receiver. I completely agree with that one, right? When you talk about your 5th or 6th wide receiver being DeAndre Moore or Ryan Wingo or just however you want to look at it, Ryan Niblett, like there's just so much talent in this room. And then the top end, Isaiah Bond, Matthew Golden, Silas Bolden, what they've shown an ability to do. I mean, you can really go 5, 6 deep in this wide receiver room. I think, and then even some of the young talent, right? You talk about the players that you expect to play in the next 2 to 3 years. I mean, it's just loaded, right? The wide receiver room, there's no complaints, no question marks about the talent in this room right now and their ability to produce this season. So, I would have wide receiver number one. I think that's the unit on this Texas football team that there are absolutely no question marks or no doubts about at this moment. Quarterback number 2, I completely agree. I think Quinn Ewers is one of the best quarterbacks in the country, rightfully so, a Heisman candidate, rightfully so, a Davey O'Brien candidate at this point, and he should be throughout the course of the season. Then you have Arch Manning behind him, who some people think, is better than Quinn Ewers at this point, even though it's not justified. We haven't seen enough of Arch Manning to see that. But I certainly still feel comfortable with the University of Texas' ability to win games with Arch Manning. And then I think a lot of people have seen Trey Owens and feel comfortable with him as a true freshman and his growth, being able to be a player that can win games for the Texas football team one day if he gets that opportunity. So certainly quarterback number 2, one of the best units on this football team and one of the best quarterback rooms in the country. Offensive line number 3, you have one of the best left tackles, if not the best left tackle in the country, and Kelvin Banks returning 4 or 5 starters. I think Cam Williams is a plus player at that right tackle position, and we'll see that this year. And then you talk about the depth behind them. You got 5 stars in Brandon Baker. You got 4 stars from left tackle all the way to right guard. Just the depth, right? It feels like you have, at least 3-4 stars at every position now since Kyle Flood has came in with that offensive line. So one of the best units in the country and certainly one of the best rooms on this football team. Very comfortable with offensive line. I agree with Inside Texas so far. Then they have edge at number 4. Edge may be a little high for me. I think we have superstar talent in that room now. You got Colin Simmons and Trey Moore. So, obviously you could produce, in that way. And you got players like Barron Sorrell and Ethan Burke coming back, and you're going to get to see Colton Bassick and maybe some other players this year. I honestly don't remember exactly what I was saying before the maintenance dude just walked in here. But anyway, I know I was talking about the edge room, and, I think that they certainly have a lot of potential to be great, but they have running back after that, and I would probably put running back ahead of it, So they got edge at 4, running back at 5. I'd probably switch those, but it's nothing crazy, right? I just think with running back, Cedric Baxter is a 5-star, right? And we expect him to be a lot better this year. First of all, Tashard Choice, right? Everything he touches turns to gold. So we expect that unit to be really good, but you got Jaden Blue behind him, who might be the best running back on the team and certainly one of the most explosive players in the country. We've seen Trey Wisner, Jared Gibson, what's his name, Kristen Clark, the one from Arizona. Just so much talent in that running back room. This is running back you at the University of Texas. I'd be a little bit more comfortable with the running back room right now than the edge room, just because we haven't seen Trey Moore on this team or at this level. Colin Simmons, as good of a prospect as he is, we haven't seen him on this level. And Barron Sorrell and Ethan Burke have just been good, really, for us so far. At times they've been great, but for the most part, consistently, they've been good. I think we've seen higher end production from Cedric Baxter and Jaden Blue, albeit in limited opportunities. So I'd have running back at 4, edge at number 5. But like I said, I'm kind of nitpicking, splitting hairs there. Cornerback and star after that, I think that's a little hard for me, right? I think obviously Malik Muhammad is really good. Jalen Gilbo and Jahdae Barron are really good, and I think they're going to split time at that star spot. But when you still don't know who your field corner is going to be, and you're saying one day Gavin Holmes looks better, one day Javion Cole looks better, then I'm not sure that, that can be one of the highest rated position groups on this team at 6, right? I think there's still a lot of question marks at cornerback, even though there's a lot of talent in the room. So I'd have that a little bit lower. Safety, same thing. If we don't know who our starters are going to be, then that can't be above linebacker for me, especially when we have an all-world talent in Anthony Hill. Sure, cornerback and safety, there's a lot of talent, but I think linebacker is just more defined right now. Cornerback, just the secondary period, we're still trying to figure that out. So I'd have linebacker a little bit higher, probably 6, cornerback 7, safety 8. They have them both over linebacker. But like I said, when you have one of the best players in the country, period, regardless of position, which I think Anthony Hill is, then linebacker should be a little bit higher, even if David Benda and Mo Blackwell don't reach the level of Anthony Hill in terms of talent. They got defensive tackle and tight end at 9 and 10. I would have tight end above defensive tackle. I just think Gunnar Helm and Amari Niblack are really good. Jordan Washington and the players you have behind them. But tight end being the second most important position on the offense per Steve Sarkisian. And just the talent we have at that position, right? I think we have more high-end talent than we do at defensive tackle. I would put them at 9, defensive tackle at 10. We've brought in some transfers, hoping Alfred Collins can kind of take that step and be a Tavondre Sweat and Byron Murphy type player, but we haven't been able to see that thus far in his career. I just think there's a lot more question marks at defensive tackle compared to tight end, but I am comfortable with both of those units and the talent they have in those rooms going into the season. So kind of nitpicking, I would move those around a little bit, but I think it's a pretty accurate ranking for Inside Texas. And like I said, even when you're talking about those rankings of the 8th, 9th, and 10th compared to the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd, it's still a lot of talent in that room. Even though we have question marks, I would fully expect those units to be pluses for the Texas Longhorns this year. A quick word from our sponsors, and then we get out of here talking about some of these NCAA 25 ratings as everybody gets excited and anticipates one of the most anticipated games, I should say, over the last decade, just in sports, period, in video game history, I guess. All right, so like I said, the first real access to the public for NCAA 25 comes today, I believe, on the pre-order, and then I think Thursday or Friday it comes out available for everybody. Again, one of the most anticipated video games ever. People have been waiting on this for over a decade, since I believe it was NCAA 14 was the last one with the Michigan quarterback on it. I can't even remember his first name. It started with a D. And then now we got Quinn Ewers, Donovan Edwards, and Travis Hunter on the cover. So just a special week. I know a lot happened over the weekend, but definitely a special week for college football fans and video game fans all over the world that get to play NCAA 25. So just discussing some of the ratings that we know already for some Texas players going into the game. And of course, this will be updated throughout the season, week by week, depending on their performance. Kelvin Banks is the highest rated Texas player at 94. I think that, absolutely has to be the highest rated Texas player is Kelvin Banks. I think he's the best player on the team. He's the best pro prospect on the team, and he's just been consistent since his first game at starting left tackle. In his second game against one of the best defenders ever in college in Will Anderson, he's rated at a 94. I think that's pretty accurate for Kelvin Banks. And I think, by the time the season ends, he'll be at a 97, 98 with those updates. The second one is Quinn Ewers at 92. I thought they would rank Quinn Ewers a little higher since he was on the cover. It feels weird to have a cover athlete at 92, but I think that's pretty accurate for Quinn Ewers. He's definitely one of the best quarterbacks in the country. I think 92 represents that he's a really good quarterback, but still some room for improvement. And it's a video game, right? You know what I'm saying? It's a 92. You can go out there and bust some ass with Quinn Ewers regardless. Arch Manning at 87, that's a little high. That's a little higher for sure. I love Arch Manning. I think he's all world. I think he's going to mean the world to this Texas football team when he gets his opportunity. But, he's played in garbage time against Texas Tech. That's it. That's enough to show 87. I'm not sure. His 87 rating might be because of his last name. Even though when I think he gets on the field, he'll prove that he's an 87 or better in the video game, if that matters or not. But right now, I don't know how you could put Arch Manning at an 87 when he hasn't really shown us anything on the field. Isaiah Bond, 88. I'm comfortable with that. When you look at it, even last year, as great as some of his moments were, he had less than 700 yards receiving. So it still needs to prove himself. By the end of the season, he'll certainly be a 93, 94 rated player, with him being Quinn Ewers' number one option. Silas Bolden, 86, same thing. I think based on what he's shown at Oregon,
that's about right, 86, especially when he's going to be like the third or fourth highest rated receiver on the game for the University of Texas. And their speed is just crazy. Like all of their speeds are crazy. I think Isaiah Bond has like 98 speed. So yeah, you're going to have fun with that Texas offense on NCAA 25. But I think Silas Bolden 86 is okay. And I think it'll be closer to 90 by the end of the season. Matthew Golden, 86, same thing. Never had a 1,000-yard season. What he's shown previously, at the University of Houston is an 86. CJ Baxter, 87. I think that's pretty accurate from what he's shown his true freshman year, right? He was a really good running back, but not a high-end or elite running back just yet. But by the end of the season, I think he'll be a 92, 93. Jaden Blue, same thing. Trey Moore, 89. I think that's pretty accurate. He's been elite in college football, but it's on a lower level at UTSA, has not been at the University of Texas. So I think 89, right on that cusp to 90, gives respect to Trey Moore for what he's done, but shows that he can do more or prove himself now at the core 4 level. Anthony Hill, 86. I'm bullish on Anthony Hill. I love Anthony Hill. I said he would be the SEC Defensive Player of the Year, Defensive Player of the Year in college by the time he left, before he ever took a snap at Texas. And all he did his true freshman year was validate that statement, because I definitely think he's going to win it over the next 2 seasons. I think 86 is real low. He quote tweeted it and said it was a little disrespectful. I completely agree, right? 86 is super low for Anthony Hill. We need that up to 93 to 95 by the end of the season, for sure. Andrew Makuba, 89. He's been consistent. Never been one of the best safety. He's been one of the best safeties in college. Never been the best safety in college, but been one of the most consistent. I think 89 is good. Malik Muhammad, 87. Had a strong true freshman season. I agree with that. And then the true freshman phenom, potentially Colin Simmons at a 79. And I like that rating right out the gate from Duncanville. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Locked On Longhorns, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. On the next episode, we'll have actual reactions from what's going on at SEC Media Days. Hook 'em. Peace.